madness? Is it just a breakdown of the mind? Or is it a dark legacy that evolution has hidden from us? In modern medicine, there is no longer a definition of madness. In psychiatric literature, it has long been replaced by diagnoses such as psychosis, schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder. But for the general public, madness still means a break with reality, a fragmentation of the self, a deviation of the mind into a dark tunnel. Perhaps this is why, for people, madness is not just a disease. It is also frightening, inexplicable, and a kind of taboo. But when exactly does what we call madness begin? When does the brain go off the rails? Scientists have been pursuing this question for years. Neurologists and psychiatrists say that the majority of so-called insanity is caused by a disruption of neurotransmitter systems in the brain. In particular, imbalances in neurotransmitters such as dopamine and glutamate can completely change the way a person perceives reality. So sometimes a sound is not just a sound. Sometimes a look can turn into the feeling that the whole world is watching you. Sometimes that whisper inside you starts making decisions for you. Madness is not just a mental breakdown, but perhaps a different experience of reality. For an individual experiencing psychosis, the world may work completely differently from our own. A ticking sound that we hear only as a background noise may be a harbinger of meaning for him or her. When the mind develops a difference in the way it interprets information from the environment, it is labeled as a disorder by the majority. But perhaps this is just a state of reality that cannot be shared. This fragile nature of the mind suggests that there is no sharp boundary between a healthy and an unhealthy mind. There is an almost invisible difference between one person's suspicion and another's paranoia. Imagination and hallucination can sometimes become one and the same with just a dose of stress, a drop of trauma, or a neurotransmitter aberration. Scientists no longer think of mental disorders as all or nothing states, but as spectrums. That is, we can all, under enough pressure, slide towards one end of the spectrum. Psychotic experiences are perhaps the product of an overstimulated, hypersensitive consciousness, a kind of overflow of perception. Genetic research, however, shows that the origins of these mental breakdowns go back much further. Many genes are involved in the development of disorders, such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. They are not caused by a single mutation, but by the combination of dozens of small genetic variants. For example, certain variants in genes such as COMT, DISK1, or NRG1 can affect decision-making processes in the frontal lobe of the brain. When someone with these variants is exposed to triggers such as environmental stress, trauma, or substance abuse, they can lose their mental balance. This is why some people are born crazy, while others are pushed into madness over time. At this point, the question of what is normal should be reconsidered. The definition of normal person that modern psychiatry created in the 20th century was mostly shaped by societal expectations. In other words, an individual's mental health was largely judged by how well they conformed to society's values and standards of behavior. Some things that make sense to us today were abnormal in the past, and vice versa. For example, homosexuality was once considered a psychiatric disorder, but today it is not. This shows that madness is not only biologically constructed, but also culturally constructed. It is not only brain chemistry that decides who is crazy and who is not. It is also society itself. Not only genetics, but also environmental and biological factors play an important role in the development of mental disorders. Traumatic childhood experiences, prolonged loneliness, sleep disorders, chronic inflammation of the immune system, even some viral infections can upset our mental balance. Recent research has also revealed the complex relationship between gut flora and the brain. Even the microbial balance in our gut is thought to have an impact on our mental health. On the other hand, it seems that mental unraveling is not unique to humans. Trauma-related behavioral disorders are also observed in some animals with advanced brain structures. In chimpanzees, individuals who lose their mothers can become depressed. Some elephants can grieve for years. Animals living in captivity can exhibit obsessive behavior with repetitive movements. This shows that mental imbalances are not exclusively human, but that human language and culture give them a different meaning. Perhaps the difference is only in our capacity to describe it. Madness is not just a broken wire. It is a moment of rupture when hundreds of factors such as genetic heritage, environmental burden, the biochemistry of the body, and social loneliness come together. And when that moment comes, the person may no longer live in the same reality as us. But that doesn't make them less human. On the contrary, it makes them more fragile, more naked, and perhaps more authentic. 60,000 years ago, Homo sapiens emerged from Africa and spread to new continents. But he was not alone on this journey. Deep in Europe and Asia, other human species awaited him, Neanderthals and Denisovans. And then, they mated. Some of the genes we carry in our bodies today are from those encounters. The cold resistance of our skin, the strength of our immune systems, and perhaps the fragility of our minds is also a result of that ancient bond. A newly published study highlights a gene variant called SLC30A9 that has been linked to schizophrenia. This variant is thought to have been passed down to us from Denisovans. Neanderthals do not have it, but it is still active today in human populations in Asia, Europe, and the Americas. This gene regulates zinc metabolism. It is thought to provide an advantage for survival in cold environments. But the slightest deviation in zinc metabolism can lead to mental disorders, even psychotic episodes. This leaves us with the question, have we really become sane, or have we started to rationalize our madness better? Philosopher Michel Foucault, in his work The History of Madness, defines madness as not only a biological, but also a social construction. In other words, madness is often shaped not by the mad person, but by the society that calls them mad. In the 17th century, people chained individuals they thought were insane and sent them out of the city in boats. In the 19th century, we tried to cure them. In the 20th century, we suppressed them with drugs. But perhaps we never really understood, because the darkness of madness draws the boundaries of reason. Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, paranoid thoughts. These are not just diseases. They can be the sounds of the human mind dancing on the edge of the abyss. And it is not just the stress of modern life or technological loneliness that has brought us to this abyss. Maybe it was that strange bond that a Denisovan man had with a Homo sapiens woman millions of years ago. Maybe if your inner voice is whispering to you today, it means that some archaic part of your brain is still talking. Because you are not just an individual. You are the carrier of a mind that has been passed down through thousands of generations. And that mind has some cracks. Today we explain mental illness by neurotransmitter disorders, brain chemistry, or genetic mutations. But none of these explanations fully answer these two questions. Why now? And why us? Perhaps mental illness is a side effect of the evolution of Homo sapiens. Perhaps madness was the price of intelligence. Perhaps we survived by mating with Denisovans. But that survival was also the beginning of a mental break. And now, in front of the screen, you ask yourself the question, am I really healthy, or am I just not triggered yet? Are mental disorders a genetic destiny? Or is everything that doesn't fit society's definition of normal considered insane? The answers are not clear. But remember this, reason is